Hey everybody, Pasquale Scuderi, Superintendent, Alameda Unified School District with a community and staff update. Today is July 31st, 2020. I want to talk a little bit about the current context in which we're making decisions on the opening of school, cover the improvements in our distance learning plan for the fall, some notes on schedules and special education, and also talk about some of the conversations and speculation that are coming up around this concept of waivers for in-person instruction for elementary schools. So a quick review of our path to opening in distance learning. As recently as July 2nd, we had joint guidance from the state and the county letting us know that we should be preparing for a reopening for in-person instruction. Obviously, the first 2 weeks of July then revealed a notable surge in COVID-19 case rate and hospitalization rates throughout Alameda County. That changed the thinking dramatically. On July 17th, we sat down with our board with the full intention of recommending that we hit the pause button, delay in-person instruction, and open and distance learning until we learned a little more. As it were, during that conversation, during that meeting, Governor Newsom held a press conference where he revealed criteria that was developed by the State Department of Public Health that in effect prohibited us from opening on the 27th until conditions in the county approved. So based on our recommendation and now the formal direction from the state, our board formalized that guidance on July 22nd, and we are back to the business of supporting two models that we plan to open within the fall. One, our remote learning program, which will remain virtual all year, irrespective of changing conditions. And then our flexible program model, which we had intended to open with modified in-person or on-campus learning. That, the order of operations there has changed, so we will open that program in distance learning and then shift to modified in-person instruction when it is safe and permissible to do so. In order to talk about a more broad reopening of in-person instruction, our county, with the new government guidelines, state government guidelines, our county needs to get off of the state monitoring list for 14 consecutive days before we can talk about reopening. What are they looking at? They're looking at the testing rates in the county, how many tests is the county administering relative to the total population. Lots of people focused on this 14-day case rate. The goal is to have less than 100 COVID-19 cases per 100,000 residents. As of July 30th, that was 100. That case rate was 152. So you can see that we are still above the threshold we need to get under to get that metric moving in the right direction and towards reopening schools in person. The test positivity rate is also something that public health officials look at, as well as hospitalization rates and local hospital capacity. So we watch these metrics daily, and these are the things that the county and the state are monitoring to make determinations about our county's placement on the current watch list. The big takeaways for me are that just making sure everyone knows that Alameda County is still on this COVID-19 monitoring list, that we have to come off that list as a county and remain off that list for 14 days before we talk about reopening in person. And one thing I want to note, because we've gotten a lot of questions about it, is that public health officials have reiterated to us time and time again that it is county, not citywide data that they are using to make their safety decisions, to make their assessments. So while Alameda's case rate, the city of Alameda's case rate might be different than Oakland or Hayward or Emeryville, it is still, by all accounts, public health is making determinations and decisions based on countywide data metrics. Distance learning, how has that changed and improved since it is the hand we've been dealt for the fall? We just want to reiterate that unlike the provisional or emergency mindset we were in the spring, we are very much committed to try to better approximate a full day of learning for our students in our distance learning model this fall. Learning, therefore, is not optional. We will give assessments at the beginning of the school year because we need to identify patterns of learning loss that may need to be addressed strategically and explicitly very early on in the year. Students will receive feedback and grades for their work. Zoom classes will not just be for check-ins and community building. Our expectation is that there will be direct instruction and the classroom experiences happening in those virtual engagements when the year starts. Attendance will be taken. We'll talk more about the policy, attendance policy for students and families in the coming weeks, as well as the procedures for staff on how to take attendance, and we'll continue to focus on safety, connection, and relationships in digital space. We know that community building is a big part of a student's school experience and that there are some certainly some barriers that get in front of community building in digital space. So we are really working or spending a lot of creative energy trying to kind of figure that out with our teachers, and we'll engage student groups as we get closer to the beginning of the year. Very important that we continue to work on that through the summer and throughout the year. A 6-day learning conference in June helped us focus on distance learning strategies, and also I think increased our capacity around trauma-informed practices. Students have had to learn and live not only through a global health pandemic, but also have had to live and work through some very explicit and ugly demonstrations of the way that racial violence and racism in general still persists in our country. And so we believe we have expanded our toolkit slightly and raised awareness and raised sensitivities around going into this year and supporting students in their learning, knowing that that context is impacting our kids as well. Additional professional development for educators before the start of the year, very successful collaboration with our labor partners to get that done. So a cluster of professional learning opportunities before the year starts, which I think will help. Student device, access to devices and Wi-Fi are things that we can work on now rather than on the fly as we had to do in the spring. Very pleased with our inventory. No child in Alameda should be without a device, given what we are currently sitting on in terms of tech capacity. The district will schedule family learning conferences. Our goal is to get these going by the end of August. We feel a responsibility to ensure that parents have some basic fluency in the educational platforms we're going to be using in distance learning with kids, and really help provide parents with a common set of simple strategies that help them support their own students during this time in distance learning. We think the changes to the secondary schedules, the middle and high school schedules, will be a benefit in virtual space in distance learning, insofar as parents and students will only need to focus on and monitor 3 content areas per semester rather than the usual 6. And I think that is appropriate and beneficial given the context that we are delivering curriculum and instruction in this fall. Some quick notes on schedules and special education. I just want to know that I know families really want to see their cohort assignments, and students and families really want to see their schedules for the fall. Our goal is to get those out mid-August, so a couple weeks from now. I do want to note that with all of the moving parts involved in developing multiple models, with all of the ways in which the pandemic is impacting our own staff of educators in terms of educators, a higher number of educators potentially requesting leaves this year because of family circumstances, that the puzzle and the challenge of putting together our staffing models and our master schedules at our schools has become considerably more complicated this summer. Nonetheless, we are working overtime to get that done and get those schedules out to you by mid-August. Special education and related supports, I just want to note that we are in no way under the illusion that distance learning doesn't have a particularly acute impact on special education students or students with learning differences. So we have 3 working groups that are working in overdrive this summer, nights, weekends, tackling issues of curriculum, tackling issues of how do we adhere to IEPs and what contingency plans do we have when obstacles get in the way of that adherence? How do we provide our support services? How do we think radically and creatively different about how to deliver those services that might once have been delivered in person and now have to be delivered through digital channels? How can our schedules be modified so that our students get all the points of contact and support that they need during the day to pursue their wider learning goals? And really looking with our labor partners and our staff on how to optimize and maximize the role of paraprofessionals as we try to support students with IEPs during this particular time. Waivers for in-person instruction. This is something that has come up quite a bit, brought about because in the governor's press release on July 17th, there was this caveat that a district superintendent could apply for a waiver to reopen in-person instruction at the elementary level, making that request to the local public health officer, provided that labor partners, parent groups, community-based organizations, and ultimately the local Board of Education was on board with that request. I want to say that this has raised hope in some areas of our district, and it's also raised anxiety in other areas of our district. And so what I can tell you as of this week is that currently, and this was said directly by the county public health officer in a meeting with myself and other superintendents, that currently Alameda County Public Health has no process for this waiver concept. Therefore, they're not accepting applications. The state and the county are very much still in conversation about details and parameters on this concept. And I just want to assure our staff and I want to assure our community that if this concept of a waiver that allows us to bring elementary students back does become a reality and does emerge with more detail, certainly we will explore it, but we will explore that in as transparent a way possible so that everybody understands our intention, so that we can give assurance that we would only take something on like that if we believe we could accomplish that in a way and in a setting that was safe for both students and staff. Our ongoing preparations, it has been a very busy summer. I expect it will continue to be that way. Unlike a typical mid to late summer where we just had the casual stress of getting open for the school year, we're having to contemplate opening and do preparations on 3 very different levels. We are pouring a lot of energy and time into making sure our distance learning opening is vastly improved from where it was in the spring. So that is moving forward. At the same time, we can't just simply wait for the day when the public health order allows us to return to in-person instruction. So concurrent with our investment in distance learning, we are concurrently or constantly having to prepare for making as smooth and as seamless a transition into in-person instruction as we can when it is safe and permissible to do so. And finally, our commitment to those families who have enrolled in the year-long remote model program, new administrative structure there, lots of new learning happening for the staff that will facilitate and support kids in that. And so putting considerable resources, time, and effort and energy into making sure that program works well and serves the students and families who have opted into that program. So finally, I will just say that our website continues to have a ton of information. Please, any town hall that we've held over the summer is recorded and available there. FAQs on both the remote program and the flexible model program are there. We plan to come back with another update in the very near future. We really appreciate your engagement with us as a community in some of these community conversations. And obviously, we will keep you informed of any and all developments that are relevant and important. We will talk to you again very soon. Please keep yourselves, your families, and those that you love very close and stay safe. Take care, and we will speak soon.